In the lowest levels of Port Virex, where artificial gravity trembled like a tired heartbeat and the air tasted of metal dust and overheated coolant, lived a human no one important had ever noticed. His name was Kael Morren. Kael had once dreamed of piloting starships, of standing on crystal bridges that arched over galaxies. Instead, at 29, he spent his days buried in the bellies of broken engines, wiping grease from alien machinery he barely understood. The port's upper tiers shimmered with wealth and authority, towering alien nobles, traveling royals, and interstellar merchants. But those like Kael worked beneath their shadows, unseen and expendable. Yet fate, as the old Earth stories claimed, had a way of finding even the smallest spark in the darkest corner. It found Kael on the night the giants fell from the sky. The beginning. The explosion came from Dock 7. Kael was halfway through repairing a ruptured plasma valve when the shockwave rattled the entire sublevel. Tools danced off their hooks. Steam burst from overhead pipes. For a long moment, Kael only stood there, heart pounding, listening to the alarms begin their shrill howl. Another cargo breach, someone muttered down the corridor. But this was no cargo breach. Against every instinct screaming at him to stay put, Kael grabbed his jacket and ran toward the noise. Dock 7 was restricted territory, usually reserved for high-clearance vessels. Whatever had hit the port had torn through 3 outer hangars before crashing into an abandoned maintenance basin at the edge of the lower docks. Smoke flooded the chamber. Twisted alloy lay scattered like shattered bones. And at the center of the destruction lay something Kael could not immediately comprehend. 2 enormous figures. They were humanoid, female, unmistakably, but far larger than any species Kael had ever seen. Each was nearly 3 times his height, their bodies armored in natural ridges of silver-blue skin. One had dark violet markings along her arms and face, the other streaks of pale gold. Their clothing, torn and burned, was woven from some regal, alien fabric that shimmered faintly even through the smoke. They were unconscious. Security sirens wailed closer. Kael's mind raced. They're found. Port Virex was not kind to crash survivors who couldn't pay. Alien or not. Especially not alien. One of the giant women stirred, letting out a low, pained groan. Her sister's chest barely moved. They'll die, Kael whispered. He didn't think. He acted. Using a heavy-duty grav hauler meant for engine parts, Kael maneuvered it beneath the 2 towering bodies with trembling hands. The machine groaned but held. He dragged them, inch by agonizing inch, into a sealed maintenance tunnel hidden behind cargo stacks. A place almost no one used anymore. By the time security patrols stormed the crash site, the basin was empty. Kael returned to his workshop long past dawn, shaking, knowing his life had just changed. The middle. It took 3 days for the giant sisters to awaken. Kael had barely slept. He brought water, nutrient paste, and emergency medical supplies scavenged from his workshop. The first to wake was the one with the violet markings. Her eyes opened slowly, large, crystalline, glowing faintly from within. She stared at him. Kael nearly dropped the water container. "You are small," she said in a deep melodic voice heavy with exhaustion. "I get that a lot," Kael blurted, then winced at his own stupidity. "You crashed. I pulled you out before security got there." The second sister awoke hours later, slower, weaker. Her golden markings flickered faintly, dim like a dying star. She was injured badly from the impact, her chest fractured, her breathing shallow. "We are the daughters of House Voryn," the first sister said, introducing herself as Lyrics. The injured one was Celine. "Our people are giants even among the stars." Kael didn't need the explanation. What unsettled him was the fear in their voices. "We were hunted," Lyrics said. "If the Emperor's agents find us, Celine will not survive the interrogation." Kael had heard only rumors of the Galactic Emperor, a being who ruled thousands of systems with absolute authority. His fleets erased worlds without announcing their names. No one defied him and lived long. And now, in Kael's workshop tunnels, 2 royal giant sisters were hiding from the most powerful figure in the galaxy. "You can't stay here forever," Kael said. "We only need time," Lyrics replied. "Time for Celine to heal. And time to disappear." Time, however, was the one luxury Port Virex had never sold cheaply. Celine's condition worsened by the hour. Her alien physiology rejected most medicines Kael tried. Her breathing became ragged. Lyrics grew desperate, pacing the narrow tunnel like a caged storm. Kael studied the wreckage from their crashed vessel. The core was fractured beyond repair, but its life support arrays used a hybrid of plasma circulation and bioreactive crystal, a technology Kael had never worked with before. But he understood machines. For 16 straight hours, Kael labored without rest. He rewired circuits using scrap ship parts. He modified coolant lines into artificial blood channels. He rerouted power through a core he barely understood, trusting instinct more than knowledge. When Selene flatlined and the tunnel filled with the high-pitched whine of her failing life force, Lyrics let out a scream that shook the metal walls. "Do not let her die, little human." Kael slammed the final connector into place and threw the switch. The makeshift machine hummed to life. Crystal arcs of energy flowed through transparent chambers. Selene gasped once, twice. Then her massive chest rose with steady, deep breaths. The tunnel fell silent. Lyrics collapsed to her knees before Kael, her massive form trembling. "You saved my sister." Kael sank against the wall, covered in grease and scorched metal. "She's strong. Stronger than any machine I've seen." From that moment on, Kael was no longer just a mechanic to them. He was family. Word of strange energy signatures soon rippled through the port's underworld. Kael sensed the danger building like pressure behind a star's core. The sisters were growing stronger. Selene slowly healed, though movement still caused her great pain. And then, one cycle later, the Emperor arrived. No alarms announced his descent. The stars themselves went silent. From the upper levels of Port Virex, enormous shadowed warships emerged from folded space, black spires blotting out artificial suns. Every holographic display in the port shifted to a single identical symbol, the sigil of Imperial Dominion. Kael felt it in his chest. "He's here," Lyrics said quietly. Their hiding place trembled as the Emperor's presence rippled through the station like a gravitational tide. Imperial sentinels flooded the docks, towering armored beings crackling with energy blades and scanning beams that could pierce through layers of reinforced steel. "They're searching for you," Kael said. "We knew he would come," Selene murmured weakly. "But we hoped not so soon." The Emperor wanted something they carried. An ancient genetic code encoded in House Voryn blood that could grant absolute control over giant-born species across the galaxy. Their parents had hidden them when they were children. Now the Emperor was harvesting what remained. Kael had no army, no warship, no divine power. He had a broken hangar, a half-built engine, and 2 injured giants who trusted him with everything they had left. And he chose to fight reality instead of bowing to it. The Emperor's shadow. Imperial sentinels breached the lower tunnels by the dozens. Kael watched their movement through salvaged sensor rigs he had hastily wired together. "They'll be here in minutes," he said. Lyric stood at full height, her muscles pulsing beneath shimmering skin. Even injured, she radiated overwhelming strength. Selene struggled to rise, leaning heavily against the tunnel wall. "If I can finish the engine," Kael said, glancing at the half-assembled craft behind them, built from the giant's wreckage and scavenged starship parts, "I might be able to get you off the station." "Might," Lyrics repeated. Kael swallowed. It's never flown before. The sentinels broke through the outer barriers with violent force. Metal screamed. Every second brought them closer. Lyrics turned to Selene. "If we fall here, then our blood becomes his weapon." Selene shook her head. "Not if the human finishes his miracle." Kael's hands flew over the controls. Power surged. The engine whined, flickered, then stabilized. "I've got thrust," Kael shouted. "Barely." The tunnel behind them exploded inward. Imperial sentinels poured in like living shadows, their blades igniting. Lyrics roared and charged. She tore through armored bodies like paper, her fists cracking alloy and sending sentinels crashing into walls with earth-shaking force. Selene, wounded but burning with defiance, summoned energy from her golden markings, releasing radiant shockwaves that shattered enemies in arcs of blinding light. Kael ran the final power sequence as the battle raged around him. Sparks rained. The engine screamed to life. "Now!" he yelled. The craft's ramp dropped. Lyric scooped Selene into one arm and Kael into the other, and hurled herself into the vessel as sentinels leapt after them. Kael slammed the ignition. The ship detonated through the hangar, sealing in a storm of fire and broken steel. blasting upward into open space as Port Virex's defense cannons turned in panic. For one heartbeat it seemed they had escaped. Then space itself split. A colossal imperial dreadform unfolded directly in their path, vast enough to eclipse stars. And at its center, a radiant figure emerged on a bridge of living energy. The Emperor. His presence crushed Kael's lungs. His voice echoed inside their bones. "Return my property," the Emperor commanded, "and the human may live." Lyrix's grip tightened around Kael. Celine's light flared weakly. Kael looked up at the being who ruled the galaxy, and something inside the poor mechanic, the overlooked human, snapped completely into clarity. "They're not property," Kael said. The Emperor's gaze fixed on him. "And you," the Emperor answered calmly, "are insignificant." The ending. The Emperor struck first. A wave of gravitational force ripped toward their fragile craft. Lyrix braced. The hull screamed as it began to collapse. Kael knew they could not outrun the Emperor, but he had built the engine for one purpose instead. "Lyrix!" Kael shouted. "Full power now." She obeyed without question. The engine flared beyond safe capacity, drawing on the giant sister's bioenergy through circuits Kael had secretly embedded, while repairing Celine's life system. Their own life force became fuel. The craft vanished in a burst of folded space, not fleeing from the Emperor, but through him. The shockwave tore across the Imperial Bridge. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor staggered. They emerged light years away in interstellar void, drifting powerless but alive. Celine collapsed unconscious again, drained but breathing. Lyrix laughed. A sound of disbelief and triumph. "You outwitted him. A god." Kael slumped in his seat, shaking. "No," he whispered. "I just built a machine that didn't know it was supposed to be impossible." They traveled for weeks through uncharted space, avoiding every civilization touched by Imperial reach. Celine recovered slowly, gaining strength each cycle. Lyrix never left Kael's side. Her once fearful eyes now filled with fierce loyalty. Eventually, they reached a hidden world beyond known star maps. A sanctuary built by ancient rebel species who had once defied the Emperor and vanished from recorded history. There, among skies of silver clouds and oceans that glowed at night, the giant sisters found safety. And Kael found something he had never possessed before. Belonging. The Emperor never forgot. Across the galaxy, whispers spread of the poor human mechanic who had stolen royal blood from the hand of fate. Worlds stirred with quiet rebellion. The myth of imperial invincibility cracked for the first time in millennia. As for Kael, he became something far beyond what he had ever dreamed. Not a hero of legends, but the man who proved that even the smallest hands could defy gods. And above the silver horizon of their hidden world, two giant sisters stood watch over the human who had saved them, brother not by blood but by choice. The mechanic who taught the stars what courage truly was.